a stormy evening, as I navigated a lonely highway, the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers was the only sound in the car. The road lay bare and infinite ahead, lit only by the faint beams of my car's headlights. It was then I noticed a lone figure by the roadside, thumb outstretched, silently asking for passage. Instinctively, I slowed and stopped, my heart thumping wildly as I lowered the window to offer a ride. He slipped into the car silently, his face hidden under the hood of his coat, rainwater dripping from his hat's edge. For a brief moment, silence hung between us, broken only by the rain's relentless patter on the car roof. As we drove, he began to utter strange, disjointed sentences that made my skin crawl. He spoke of the rain, the lonely road, of everything and nothing, his words forming a maze of unease and confusion. I tried to dismiss his odd behavior as the product of the late hour and our isolated surroundings. Yet, a sense of disquiet grew with each mile, an intuition that something sinister hid beneath his calm exterior.
His eyes shifted nervously, avoiding mine, his hands restless.
I strained to keep my focus on the road, trying to ignore the growing dread within me. Despite my efforts, I couldn't shake off the feeling of impending danger, regretting my decision to pick up this stranger. The thought of stopping and asking him to leave crossed my mind, but fear and indecision kept me frozen in place. I kept driving, my thoughts a whirlwind of fear and strategies for escape. But as tension peaked, he drew a knife from his pocket, its blade catching the scant light inside the car. Fear choked me, adrenaline surging as I struggled to maintain control of the vehicle. In that frantic moment, I knew I had to act swiftly to avoid a grim fate. My hands shook as they reached for the door, prepared to jump out and flee. But just as I was about to act, he spoke in a dark, threatening tone, sending a wave of fear through me. "You should have never stopped for me," he sneered, his voice laced with venom. A wave of terror engulfed me as the reality of my predicament sank in, trapped in a vehicle with a menacing stranger, miles away from any help. My mind raced with panic, desperately searching for a way out of this dire situation. Just as despair seemed to take hold, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon, the distant twinkle of headlights, a lifeline in the enveloping darkness. With a surge of resolve, I floored the accelerator, urging the car forward and racing towards the promise of safety. As we neared the oncoming vehicle, a sense of relief flooded through me, a testament to my survival against the ominous threat that had loomed in the passenger seat. This chilling encounter will forever be etched in my memory, a haunting reminder of the day my partner and I inadvertently wandered into a scenario straight from our darkest fears. It was supposed to be an ordinary road trip, driving down an isolated highway as dusk transformed the sky and shadows stretched across the asphalt. We were lost in conversation and music when suddenly a static-laden voice broke through the radio, a desperate call for help piercing the tranquility. Without hesitation, driven by a deep-seated urge to assist, my partner and I decided to respond to the distress signal. As we ventured towards the source, the surroundings grew eerily quiet, the sun's last rays disappearing beyond the horizon and plunging us into darkness. Eventually, we came upon a vehicle, its warning lights blinking feebly, a silent beacon in the night. Approaching the car, a sense of unease took hold. It appeared deserted, doors ajar, the engine dead, a stark, unsettling silence where a cry for help had once been. My partner and I exchanged wary looks, a chill running down our spines as the realization dawned on us. We might have fallen into a carefully laid snare. Suddenly, the sound of advancing footsteps broke the silence. We spun around to face the darkness, only to be met by a group of figures, their expressions twisted into sinister grins. Overwhelmed by panic, we understood our dire situation. We were outmatched, with slim chances of escape. Exchanging a determined glance with my partner, we knew our survival hinged on our wits and swift action. Before we could even react, they were upon us with chilling efficiency, yanking us from our vehicle with a strength that felt inhuman. They forced us to the ground, their grips unyielding as they held us down. Adrenaline surged through me as I struggled in vain, my mind frantic for any escape from this horror. But their hold was unbreakable. Then, one of them, masked in a visage of nightmares with jagged contours and a sinister air, stepped forward. A knife glinted ominously under the moon's light as they approached, each step measured, heightening the terror. My pulse thundered in my ears, fear mingling with a desperate hope for a miracle. And just as the blade was poised to strike, salvation came in the form of blaring sirens, their crescendo breaking the night's silence. The attackers hesitated, their unity faltering under the weight of fear, giving us the sliver of opportunity we needed. We wrenched ourselves free and dashed to our car, propelled by sheer survival instinct. As we made our escape, the sight of police lights offered a profound relief, a promise of safety from the nightmare we'd just endured. That night's terror is etched in my memory, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace. The fear I felt then still lingers, a shadow that follows me. On another occasion, I found myself driving along a deserted road under the cloak of night when a car appeared, oddly stationary in the road, its hazard lights a lone beacon in the darkness. Something felt amiss, the absence of any signs of life around the vehicle unsettling. Despite my reservations, curiosity led me to stop and explore. As I neared the abandoned car, the reality of the situation began to dawn on me. The driver's door was open, swaying slightly in the wind, the car devoid of any occupants. It was then I noticed a folded piece of paper on the dashboard, its presence ominous. With hands shaking, I unfolded the note to reveal a plea, "Help me," written in letters stained with what appeared to be blood. A wave of nausea hit me as I grasped the gravity of what I held a desperate cry for help. Panic took over, and I rushed back to my car, fumbling with the keys in a frantic bid to escape the foreboding scene. As I was about to drive away, an unsettling sound pierced the silence of the night, a deep, menacing growl from the shadows beyond the roadside. My gaze snapped to a figure stepping out from the darkness, its movements slow and purposeful. A chill coursed through me, the realization dawning that the author of the distressing note was still nearby, lurking in the shadows. Panic surged within me, the feeling of entrapment overwhelming. Desperately, I searched for my phone, only to find it missing, swallowed by the chaos of the moment. My eyes darted back to the car, clinging to a sliver of hope that I could still aid the note's author. Yet, the sight of the still damp blood on the paper, shining under the moonlight, sent a wave of horror through me. The grim realization hit me I had wandered into a nightmare far beyond my worst fears. The urgency to flee, to seek help, consumed me. But as I turned to escape, the sound of approaching footsteps filled the air, their pace quickening, a harbinger of impending doom. I ran with all my might, heart pounding, as terror and adrenaline propelled me through the dark. A misstep sent me tumbling to the ground, gasping for air, struggling to rise. But then, an icy grip seized my ankle, dragging me back toward the abyss. In a frenzy, I fought against the grasp, but it was futile. The hold only tightened, pulling me deeper into peril. Yet, even as I faced my captor, prepared for the end, an unexpected voice broke through low, insistent, urging me to run. Without hesitation, I scrambled up and fled, not daring to look back until I was enveloped in safety. Collapsing in exhaustion, I was left bewildered and breathless, my mind reeling from the escape. Another evening, as I made my way home, the streets were eerily silent. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I notice a car trailing too closely, its headlights slicing through the darkness. Initially, it seemed innocuous, merely another late-night traveler. But as I zigzagged through streets, trying to shake it off, the realization hit it wasn't coincidental. The car was shadowing me, mirroring each turn with unsettling precision. A wave of panic washed over me as I grappled with the situation, my thoughts racing with potential threats. The idea of contacting the police crossed my mind, yet a deep-seated fear cautioned against it, suggesting it might only worsen matters. I kept driving, my pulse racing as I desperately sought an escape from the harrowing chase. The pursuing car remained a constant shadow, its presence a menacing specter in every turn and straightaway. It felt as though I was entangled in a macabre dance, the other driver delighting in the twisted thrill of the hunt. As time stretched on, desperation took hold, my every thought focused on eluding this unyielding pursuer. Yet, no matter the speed or the cunning of my maneuvers, the car was always there, its headlights a pair of relentless, accusing eyes in my mirror. Panic muddied my thoughts, leaving me ensnared in a web of fear and indecision. Then, in a terrifying climax, the car drew level with me, its driver shrouded in shadow, our eyes meeting in a fleeting, eerie connection that spoke volumes of the peril at hand. Abruptly, the car veered in front of me, forcing a sharp, heart-stopping halt to avoid disaster. As the car vanished into the night, I was left in a state of shock, alone on the desolate road, my heart hammering against my chest as I grappled with the aftermath. Despite my attempts to reassure myself, a lingering sense of dread clung to me, the unsettling notion that the driver was still out there, biding their time. With trepidation shadowing me every mile, I pressed on toward home, the encounter haunting me. Yet, as I finally reached the safety of my driveway and stepped out of the car, a profound relief enveloped me. I had endured, outsmarted the looming threat, and emerged unscathed. The sanctuary of my home brought a welcome end to the nightmare. In a different vein, my partner and I found ourselves on an adventurous road trip driven by wanderlust and the allure of the unknown. Our journey led us to a small, obscure town, its name unfamiliar and inviting curiosity. The decision to explore was spontaneous, driven by intrigue. However, upon entering, an unsettling stillness greeted us. The town appeared deserted, its silence profound and disquieting. Yet, our curiosity propelled us forward, through the desolate streets and past the decrepit structures. As we delved deeper, subtle signs of hidden life began to emerge. The occasional twitch of a curtain, fleeting shadows that danced just out of view, each hint stoking the flames of our unease. Despite our attempts to rationalize, the nagging feeling that something was amiss grew stronger. Our unease turned to apprehension when we discovered a concealed cellar beneath an abandoned dwelling. Inside, eerie symbols and peculiar relics hinted at a mysterious, perhaps malevolent history. The cold touch of fear was unmistakable as we stood amongst the remnants of the cellar's dark legacy. It felt as though we had stumbled upon secrets meant to remain buried, secrets the town's denizens wished to keep from prying eyes. Our discovery was barely processed when the sound of approaching footsteps from above sent us into a state of frozen anticipation, hearts pounding in anticipation of the unknown. Instead of a welcoming committee, we were met by an ominous group, their eyes gleaming with hostility, their intentions unmistakably sinister. A wave of panic washed over me as the realization set in. We were cornered, at the mercy of these menacing strangers. A silent exchange with my partner conveyed our shared fear and the direness of our situation. Faced with no alternatives, we fled. We navigated the town's labyrinthine streets, gasping for air as we sought to evade our relentless pursuers. Yet, They shadowed our every move with unnerving precision, as if the town itself was an extension of their being, predicting our every escape attempt. The terror was visceral, a raw fear that quickened the pulse and drenched the skin in sweat. Despite the overwhelming odds, the primal urge to survive spurred us on, pushing us beyond our limits. At last, a sliver of hope appeared, a narrow passage between buildings, a path to potential freedom. We made a desperate dash for this gap, our bodies screaming in protest, every muscle straining towards salvation. When we finally emerged from the confines of that malevolent town, the open countryside greeted us with its serene night air, a stark contrast to the nightmare we'd fled. We didn't stop running until the town was nothing but a distant memory, collapsing in exhaustion, yet acutely aware that the night's events would forever haunt us. The chilling memory of that forsaken town and its eerie inhabitants remains vivid in my mind, a recurring specter in my nightmares. On a different note, I found myself driving along a deserted highway late one night, the need for fuel pressing. An old, somewhat eerie gas station loomed ahead, its solitary presence the only option for miles. Despite its uninviting appearance, necessity dictated I stop. Upon arrival, the absence of any signs of life was immediately apparent. No vehicles, no lights, an unsettling silence pervading the air. Typically, even the most remote gas stations exhibit some hint of activity, but this place was enveloped in an eerie calm. Exiting my car, I was enveloped by an oppressive stillness, the silence almost tangible. Approaching the pump, its failure to dispense fuel added to the growing unease. My attention then turned to the station's shop, dark and seemingly abandoned. Yet the shelves visible within suggested it hadn't been entirely forsaken. Compelled by the possibility of finding assistance inside, I ventured towards the door. Its hinges groaned in protest as I entered, the interior air stale with the scent of neglect, a blend of old oil and accumulated dust lingering in the atmosphere. Exploring the aisles lined with time-worn snacks and beverages, I felt a growing sense of unease. My voice, calling out for anyone present, merely echoed back at me, amplifying the store's eerie silence. Just as I was about to leave, a sound caught my attention, a soft, indistinct murmur, growing steadily louder, drawing me toward the back of the store with a mix of fear and curiosity. The source of the murmuring was a partially open door, revealing a faint glow from within. Pushing the door gently, I entered a room that would haunt my memories forever. Inside, a group of motionless figures formed a circle, their faces void of emotion, their gazes fixed on something horrifying at the center. That something was a creature beyond my wildest nightmares, towering, emaciated, with elongated limbs stretching upwards, its skin ghastly pale and taut over its skeletal frame. But its face, or the lack thereof, was the most chilling aspect, a featureless expanse of skin that seemed to stare into my very soul. When it spoke, its voice was a whisper of death, beckoning me to join the silent congregation. A primal instinct of survival kicked in, and I fled, not stopping until I was safe in my car, speeding away from the nightmare I had stumbled upon. The fear of being followed, of being called back to that place, clung to me long after I'd escaped. The experience left me with an unshakable resolve to steer clear of desolate gas stations in the future. The memory of that creature and its eerie followers a constant shadow in my mind. Our journey back from the road trip took an unexpected detour, leading us through a neglected neighborhood, far from the familiarity of the highway. Initially, the detour seemed like a minor hiccup, an unplanned adventure at the end of our trip. Initially, we thought retracing our steps back to the highway would be straightforward. However, as we ventured further into the neighborhood, the eerie desolation of the streets and the decay of the buildings around us suggested otherwise. It felt like a scene straight out of a dystopian film. Trying to stay optimistic, we reassured one another, hoping to navigate our way out soon. But our anxiety intensified when we encountered a group of locals. Their icy stares and unwelcoming demeanor made it clear we were unwelcome intruders. There was an unmistakable air of threat about them that chilled us to the bone. As we drove past, they began to tail us, their footsteps ominously resonating in the silent streets. Panic surged within me as the realization dawned on us. We were in deep trouble. In a frantic attempt to evade them, we twisted and turned through the maze of streets. But they were always just a shadow behind, biding their time. Our situation went from bad to dire when our car abruptly faltered and came to a halt, rendering us vulnerable in the desolate street. Surrounded, and with no escape in sight, we locked ourselves in, hoping against hope for a way out as they advanced with clear, malicious intent. In that moment of despair, a potential escape route caught my attention, an alleyway concealed behind dumpsters. It was a slim chance, but our only one. I rallied my friends, and we made a break for it, darting into the alley with our pursuers close behind. Navigating the labyrinth of narrow paths in sheer panic, we dared not look back, driven by the primal urge to survive. Eventually, emerging onto a main road felt like a miracle. We frantically hailed a passing vehicle, our pleas for help tumbling out in a rush of words. The driver, though initially skeptical, couldn't ignore the palpable fear in our eyes and agreed to help. As we distanced ourselves from that nightmarish locale, a wave of relief and gratitude washed over me. We had miraculously evaded a grim fate, a testament to our will to survive. But the shadow of that harrowing experience would linger, a stark reminder of the unseen dangers that can emerge from the depths of obscurity. Our group was simply seeking an escape from the everyday, a quest for the unknown to inject some excitement into our routine lives. The allure of an ancient, secluded road rumored to lead nowhere was irresistible. This path was barely discernible, shrouded by nature's embrace, as if the earth was intent on erasing its memory. Undaunted, we embarked on foot, navigating through the dense foliage that seemed determined to hinder our progress. The deeper we ventured, the more the forest closed in around us, its towering trees casting an ever-deepening gloom. But it was the silence, so profound and unsettling, punctuated only by the occasional natural sound, that truly unnerved us. The mysterious symbols etched into the bark of the trees only added to the sense of foreboding, as if the very woods were warning us to turn back. Yet, our curiosity propelled us forward, each step fueled by a blend of trepidation and thrill. The day waned, and with the fading light, the forest took on an even more otherworldly aspect, as if we had stepped beyond the bounds of time. When we finally emerged into a moonlit clearing, the sight that greeted us was one of sheer horror. The remnants of some unspeakable tragedy lay scattered before us, bones gleaming eerily in the moonlight, surrounded by the tattered remnants of existence. Rooted to the spot in shock, the grim reality of our situation became chillingly clear. Yet, it was the sound of approaching footsteps that shattered the last vestiges of our denial. We were not alone. Something malevolent was lurking just beyond our sight, its presence felt but unseen. The realization sparked a frantic escape attempt as we tore through the undergrowth, driven by raw fear. But our unseen assailants were relentless, their mocking calls a constant reminder of their proximity. Despite our desperate efforts, they seemed to anticipate our every move, driving us deeper into despair with each faltering step. Reaching the forest's edge, gasping for air, we cast a fearful glance behind us. The sight that met our eyes was haunting. The beings that had chased us stood at the clearing's boundary, their forms grotesque and unnatural, eyes shining with a supernatural luminescence. Overcome with dread, We turned and fled into the enveloping night, our hearts racing with the terror of the experience, swearing never to venture near that accursed forest again. On a different note, as I was driving home after a tiring day, the tranquility of the evening was shattered when my headlights illuminated a small figure by the roadside, a child, alone and vulnerable in the darkness. Compelled by concern, I stopped and approached the child, offering words of comfort in an attempt to understand their predicament. Despite my efforts, the child remained silent, their expression one of fear and confusion. Moved by compassion, I lifted the child into my car, wrapping them in my jacket for warmth, my mind swirling with questions about how they came to be in such a situation. Yet, as I drove, a creeping unease took hold, a sense that something about the situation was amiss, stirring a deep sense of apprehension within me. Driven by a desire to help, I headed towards the nearest police station, hoping to find assistance in reuniting the child with their family. However, upon arrival, the deserted state of the station, with its flickering lights, only heightened my sense of foreboding. Standing at the threshold, uncertainty gripped me as I gazed at the child, now sleeping soundly in the back seat, pondering my next move in the eerie stillness of the night. Gripped by a profound sense of responsibility, I couldn't bear the thought of leaving the child to an unknown fate. Despite the palpable danger, I was determined to uncover the truth and ensure the child's safety. As I drove towards the child's indicated destination, the sensation of being under surveillance grew increasingly intense, heightening my apprehension. The outskirts of town felt like a threshold to a darker realm, the enveloping gloom akin to a tangible force intent on smothering me. Despite the ominous atmosphere, my resolve to protect the child fortified my courage, driving me to confront whatever lay ahead. Upon reaching the dilapidated house the child had pointed out, a wave of hesitation washed over me. Yet, driven by a mix of fear and determination, I ventured inside, the silence of the abandoned home punctuated only by the eerie creak of aged floorboards underfoot. My calls for any occupants met with silence, adding to the mounting tension as I searched the desolate rooms. Just as hope began to wane, a faint, distressed sound from the basement drew me deeper into the heart of the mystery. There, in the dimly lit basement, I discovered the child's family, bound and distressed, their expressions a mix of fear and relief at my arrival. Swiftly, I freed them from their bonds, and together we fled the sinister confines of the house, a shared relief at our escape, tempered by the unnerving feeling of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. In a separate encounter, after completing some late-night repairs at the shop, I took a car out for a test drive to ensure everything was in working order. The streets were deserted, the nights quiet, only broken by the steady hum of the car's engine. As I navigated a bend, my headlights illuminated a lone figure standing motionless in the road ahead, casting an eerie presence in the still of the night. The abrupt halt of the car, the chaos of the swerve, and the eventual crash into the ditch left me reeling, the deployed airbag and the spinning surroundings disorienting me for a few tense moments. Once the initial shock subsided, I knew I had to assess the situation, my hands trembling as I pushed the door open to face the eerie stillness of the night. The figure that had caused the accident remained an enigmatic presence in the headlight's beam, silent and immobile, heightening the sense of unease that enveloped me. Despite my attempts to communicate, there was no response, only a penetrating stare that sent shivers through me. Isolated and without my phone, which seemed to have vanished in the turmoil, panic began to take hold, the realization of my vulnerability striking deep. The figure's persistent gaze, unaltered by my movements or the flashlight's glare, only added to the surreal fear gripping me. In a desperate bid for some semblance of control, I rummaged through the glove compartment, my hands finally clasping around a flashlight. Its beam offered a fleeting sense of security as I approached the figure, revealing a man shrouded in darkness, his features obscured, his reaction to my presence non-existent. Torn between the instinct to flee and a compelling urge to assist, I tentatively reached out, hoping to break through whatever barrier held him in this trance-like state. But the momentary contact sent a shock through me, a tangible force that hinted at an inexplicable connection between his presence and the night's harrowing events. His unchanged demeanor in the face of my reaction only deepened the mystery, leaving me to grapple with the realization that he was at the center of the night's turmoil, a silent orchestrator of the fear and confusion that now consumed me. Fleeing from the scene, my legs propelled me relentlessly until the lights of the nearest town embraced me, offering a semblance of safety. Collapsed and trembling on the cold sidewalk, the night's events replayed in my mind, a relentless loop of fear and disbelief. It took considerable time to muster the courage to return for the car, and when I did, all traces of the mysterious figure had vanished, as if swallowed by the night itself. The enigma of that encounter lingers, a haunting memory etched in the recesses of my mind, a stark reminder of the night's terror and isolation. In a different setting, I found myself navigating the silent expanse of a construction site during a routine night shift. The solitude was punctuated only by the hum of my vehicle and the sporadic crackle of the radio. The unfinished structures stood as silent monoliths in the darkness, their presence both imposing and unsettling. An inexplicable sensation of being observed persisted as I patrolled the area. Then, a subtle, scraping noise from within one of the buildings pierced the stillness, halting me in my tracks. With cautious steps, I ventured towards the source, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the darkness, my heart racing with anticipation and apprehension. Announcing my presence yielded no response, only the echo of my voice in the vast emptiness. Despite the foreboding atmosphere, I pressed on, driven by duty, the building's interior a maze of shadows and silence. The noises intensified, a symphony of eerie whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls. As I rounded a corner, adrenaline surged, revealing a figure shrouded in shadow. The tension was palpable as I illuminated the area, only to be met with the lifeless gaze of a mannequin, a jarring, yet ultimately harmless presence. Relief washed over me, mingled with a trace of embarrassment at my heightened alertness. Yet, even as I attempted to dismiss the incident, an underlying sense of unease lingered, a subtle reminder that not all is as it seems in the quiet of the night. The cessation of the strange noises did little to alleviate the pervasive feeling of being observed, prompting me to abandon my patrol prematurely and seek refuge in my vehicle. The cold embrace of the night seemed more intense as I hastened back, every step fueled by an urgent desire for safety. Yet, as I settled into the driver's seat, a faint whisper cut through the hum of the engine, halting my movements. My heart raced as I discerned the source, the radio, which had remained silent until this moment. With hands shaking, I adjusted the volume, and as the voice became clearer, its message was unmistakable: leave. Now, the words, though faint, were laden with an ominous urgency that sent shivers through me. Driven by instinct, I shut off the radio, shifted into drive, and accelerated away from the site, not daring to question the origin of the warning. The urgency to distance myself from whatever danger might be present overrode all else. It wasn't until I reached the safety of the main road that I allowed myself a moment of relief, yet the incident left me with an unsettling sense of having evaded an undefined menace. The experience lingered as I drove home, leaving me to ponder the source of the disturbances and the chilling whisper. Was it merely a trick of the mind, or had I stumbled upon something far more malevolent? In a different vein, I was engaged in my routine late-night Uber shift, navigating the city's streets, illuminated by the intermittent glow of streetlights. The tranquility of the night was punctuated only by the occasional passing vehicle, a stark contrast to the anticipation of my next fare. Upon receiving a ride request, I promptly accepted and set off toward the designated pickup location, ready to continue the night's work. Arriving on a dimly illuminated street, the surrounding homes were engulfed in darkness, setting an ominous tone as I awaited my next fare. The approaching passenger exuded an unsettling aura, intensifying the chill in the air as they settled into the back seat. Despite my efforts to dismiss the uneasy feeling, the destination they provided, a secluded, almost mythical location, heightened my apprehension. The journey led us away from the city's safety, deep into an enveloping darkness, heightening the sense of isolation. My passengers' silence and fixed gaze added to the growing tension, their lack of response to my attempts at conversation leaving a palpable unease. As we approached the specified desolate address, the atmosphere grew increasingly foreboding, the narrow, tree-lined road adding to the sense of dread. The destination revealed itself as an isolated, darkened house, standing ominously at the end of a gravel driveway, its presence sending a wave of fear through me. Turning to address my passenger, I was met with an empty back seat. My fare had inexplicably disappeared. Confusion and panic ensued as I grappled with the reality of the situation, questioning the very existence of the passenger. It was then, amidst the overwhelming fear, that a whisper broke the silence, a simple thanks from the darkness outside, confirming the presence of an unseen entity. Driven by fear, I hastily retreated, the car's tires crunching against the gravel as I fled back to the city's comforting lights. Safely within the city's embrace, I was left to ponder the night's harrowing events, the memory of that terrifying encounter, and the eerie sensation of being watched by something malevolent forever etched in my mind. Our road trip, envisioned as a joyful escape into the countryside, took a harrowing turn as an unsettling atmosphere enveloped us on the secluded country lanes. The descending dusk cast eerie shadows over the landscape, intensifying a growing sense of being under surveillance. This foreboding feeling materialized alarmingly when masked figures materialized from the woodland, effectively barricading our path and brandishing weapons in a threatening display. The sudden confrontation brought our vehicle to an abrupt and skidding stop, mere feet from the menacing group. Caught in a vortex of panic, the urgency of the situation left no room for deliberation. Amidst the chaos and the sound of my friends' terrified screams, I scrambled for my phone, a lifeline in the desperate hope for rescue. However, the situation escalated before help could be summoned. The car window shattered under the force of a gun, showering us with glass as one assailant forcibly extracted me from the perceived safety of the vehicle. Despite my frantic resistance, his overpowering strength rendered my efforts futile, dragging me into the forest's ominous embrace. My friends' cries echoed hauntingly as I was pulled deeper into the woods, their voices a stark reminder of the dire situation, leaving a chilling sense of isolation as the distance between us grew. The group swiftly maneuvered through the dense trees, directing us like helpless prey. Their hushed conversations dripped with malevolence, sending shivers down my spine. It became clear we were in peril, at the mercy of people with sinister motives. Despite the encroaching fear, hope refused to abandon me. Survival meant resisting with every ounce of strength until freedom was within reach. Summoning courage, I struck my captor with all my might, catching him off guard. In that fleeting moment, I broke loose and sprinted through the forest, zigzagging between trees, desperate to outpace our pursuers. Their relentless pursuit echoed behind me, their determination palpable. Yet, I refused to surrender. Ignoring the burning ache in my chest and the protesting muscles, I pushed on. Then, a beacon of light pierced the darkness. Safety beckoned. Summoning every ounce of energy, I raced towards it. As I stumbled onto the road, relief washed over me. The car waited, friends offering solace in their embrace. With screeching tires, we fled, leaving the horrors behind. Only in the sanctuary of the city did we exhale. Bruised but alive, we silently vowed to bury the trauma, to carry on. Yet, the memory lingered, a haunting reminder of life's fragility.